Okay, so here we go. I think you all can see the screen. I'm zooming in into the reaction so that it is a little more clear. So here we are discussing the mechanism of trans-aldolase. So in this process, I hope you all can see the cursor very clearly. There is a small hand-like structure moving there. So it shows you that the enzyme trans-aldolase, it is going to interact with pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate. Okay, and which part of trans-aldolase is interacting, that is also mentioned over here. So it's the lysine group of trans-aldolase which is going to interact with pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate. So the amino group of the enzyme, which is on the lysine, that amino group is going to interact with pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate, wherein you can see that this second carbon is what we are going to attach to the amino group of lysine of the enzyme. But in this process, we are going to eliminate the oxygen which is present on the second carbon. We are going to eliminate it. We are going to remove it as a hydroxyl group. So to remove a hydroxyl group, I'm going to eliminate one hydrogen from the amino group and this oxygen. So a hydroxyl group will be removed and a Schiff's base will be formed. So that's going to give me NH double bond C because I'm removing a hydrogen from amino group and I am eliminating oxygen. So it gives me NH double bond C. So that's how pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate is going to be attached to the lysine residue of the enzyme. Now, after this combination of the enzyme and the precursor is formed, we are going to break some bonds. Okay, we are going to remove this hydrogen that you see over here. We are going to break the hydrogen जहां से arrow निकल रहा है on the fourth carbon. The hydroxyl group hydrogen is what we plan to eliminate. Now, as we plan to eliminate that, it's obvious that it's going to create the strain on the other bonds such that the red colored carbon and the black colored carbon, so the third and the fourth carbon, uske beech mein jo bond hai, that's going to break. Okay, we are going to break that bond such that this four carbon structure at the base is going to be released free. Now, when I release this free, I have removed the hydrogen from the hydroxyl group. So what I will have is CH double bond O. So an aldehyde group. Okay. And the rest of the part. So a 4-carbon compound is going to be set free. What is that 4-carbon compound? It is erythrose 4 phosphate because you have a phosphate group at the 4th carbon. So I'm going to refer to it as erythrose 4 phosphate. Okay, now what am I left with? I am going to be left with a structure wherein I have the enzyme and I have a 3-carbon structure attached to it, something like this, as you can see on the left hand side. Okay, this is what is going to be left with the enzyme. Okay, now when this is left with the enzyme, I want to readjust this structure wherein I want to move the uh, you know or rather you can just a minute. Okay, yeah, so this is the structure that you form. I'm sorry, this is the structure that you form. Why? Because when you break the bond here between the third and the fourth carbon, there's going to be a double bond created between the second and the third carbon at this juncture. Okay, here there will be a double bond created. So यहाँ पे NH और कार्बन के बीच में अब सिंगल बॉन्ड हो जाएगा और ये दोनों कार्बन के बीच में डबल बॉन्ड होगा. I'll repeat why. You're breaking the bond between the third and the fourth carbon. यहाँ का bond आप तोड़ रहे हो. तो यहाँ का bond जब आप तोड़ोगे, so it's going to create a double bond over here, which will convert this bond between NH and carbon into a single bond. So this is what you will form. Okay, but to stabilize this structure, we will shift this double bond back to NH and carbon. So we are shifting it such that you form a carb anion. This structure is called carb anion because you have a uh, possibility of attaching a compound over here to the carbon which now has a negative charge. So we are referring to it as a carb anion structure, because just to stabilize it, we have shifted this double bond over here, and now we have an opportunity to attach some other compound over here to this carbon. So that some other compound is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, because that was what was formed in your transketolase reaction. You had a pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate and a glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. The pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate already has interacted with the enzyme. Now it is time for glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate to come and attach over here. So now as this comes and attaches, it has a C double bond O which needs to be converted to hydroxyl group. So a proton which was removed earlier will be taken inside, and this is how the structure is going to look like. So it gives you a 6 carbon structure, as you can see. Okay. Now you had removed a hydroxyl group in the beginning, if you remember, right? In the very beginning, we had removed a hydroxyl group. The oxygen was on this carbon and the hydrogen came from the amino group. So we are going to return that. We are going to hydrolyze the Schiff's base such that the enzyme is set free with its intact amino group, and the oxygen is given back to the carbon, and we set this 6 carbon compound free, which is nothing but fructose 6 phosphate. Let us discuss this reaction once again. We said that we have to attach pseudoheptulose 7 phosphate to the amino group of lysine of transaldolase enzyme. For this attachment to take place, we are eliminating a hydroxyl group. Where is that hydroxyl group coming from? That hydroxyl group is coming from the second carbon where you remove the oxygen, and a hydrogen which is coming from the amino group. So you form a Schiff's base. And there is a double bond which is being formed between NH and carbon. Now you're going to remove the hydrogen from the hydroxyl group of fourth carbon, which is going to create a nick over here such that a 4 carbon structure is released, that is erythrose 4 phosphate, and a double bond is introduced between the second and the third carbon, which thereby converts this to a single bond between NH and carbon. So you get a structure like this. But to facilitate the attachment of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, we will form a carb anion by shifting this double bond back between NH and carbon and convert this to a single bond, such that now a carb anion is formed, and this carb anion will facilitate the attachment of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. I will add or take up a proton such that this C double bond O can be converted into a hydroxyl group, such that now I have a 6 carbon compound. Now to let the enzyme free and release the compound here, I have to hydrolyze the Schiff's base, for which I will return the hydroxyl group which was added earlier. So there will be a hydrogen given to the amino group and an oxygen given to the carbon, such that fructose 6 phosphate is released and the enzyme is also set free. Does this make sense to all of you? Can I see a yes in the chat box? Okay, sounds great. So with that, we come to the significance of HMP. So when we talk about significance of HMP, we have already spoken that there are two very important components which HMP gives us. Number one is NADPH, which is going to act as a reducing agent, and it is very important for several biosynthetic reactions. So if you talk about long chain fatty acid synthesis or steroid synthesis, long chain fatty acid synthesis is something that you will learn in the next semester in Sem 6. That time also you will see that NADPH has a very, very important role, because to synthesize some very important lipids, we require NADPH as a reducing agent. But other than that, NADPH acts as a reducing agent in several significant reactions of our system, like reduction of glucose to sorbitol, dihydrofolic acid to tetrahydrofolic acid, glucuronic acid to gluconic acid. All these metabolic reactions will require NADPH as the reducing agent. Also, formation of unsaturated fatty acids, conversion of amino acids like phenylalanine to tyrosine, these will need NADPH. And you will see that NADPH is always maintained in abundance in adipose tissues, mammary glands, adrenal glands, where a lot of lipid steroidal compounds are being synthesized continuously. Okay. So NADPH has a lot of significance when it comes to anabolic reactions, when it comes to biosynthetic reactions. We have already discussed that ribose 5-phosphate or pentoses are another significant product coming out of the triple P or the HMP pathway. Pentoses are very, very important to form nucleotides, whether it is for RNA or it is for DNA. Also, for several coenzymes, production of ATP, you are going to require pentoses as the precursor molecules. Also in HMP, you have formation of erythrose 4-phosphate. We just saw that in transaldolase reaction. Let me tell you that erythrose 4-phosphate and PEPA, which we have studied in glycolysis, these are very important raw materials or precursors for a pathway in plants and microorganisms, which is called as shikimic acid pathway. This pathway utilizes erythrose 4-phosphate and PEPA for synthesizing certain aromatic amino acids like phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan. And you know that these three amino acids are very significant amino acids because most of the proteins they have tryptophan, tyrosine in large amounts. So erythrose 4-phosphate is a very important precursor because from that you will be able to synthesize these aromatic amino acids. Other than these, several other components of the cell can be synthesized using erythrose 4-phosphate. So it acts as precursor for other cellular components also. Now, whether you talk about oxidative or non-oxidative, you have to understand that they are connected with each other. We have discussed this during the regulation process also, that if a lot of pentoses are synthesized and they are not needed, then those pentoses will be converted back to hexoses by non-oxidative process. So oxidative and non-oxidative process are not separate. They are clearly linked to each other. And when you study photosynthesis in biochemistry in next semester, you will be seeing how the same pathway will become very important part of Calvin cycle. So if you learn HMP very well, your Calvin cycle's regeneration part will become very, very simple because you will see a very similar set of reaction taking place in the photosynthetic regeneration process also. Okay. That makes photosynthetic process, the Calvin cycle or the C3 cycle as you call it, cyclic in nature because you start with RUBP, you end with RUBP. If you remember, you've studied it in 12th standard, ribulose bisphosphate, right? So you start the Calvin cycle with RUBP, you end it with RUBP. That regeneration of RUBP is very, very similar to what you have studied right now in the non-oxidative phase. So if you learn this process very well, then that's going to be a cakewalk for you. So this is the overall representation of the reactions taking place in the phosphogluconate pathway, another name for HMP pathway. Okay. So this is giving you an idea of how you are forming glucose 6-phosphate from glucose 6-phosphate, combining both the oxidative and the non-oxidative process. Okay, so that's the overall picture of how it can be a cyclic process because you're starting with glucose 6-phosphate and you're ending with glucose 6-phosphate. That's the overall idea over here, which you can see. Okay, and basically because there is one decarboxylation step that takes place. So you will see that if you start with 6 glucose 6-phosphate molecules, you will end up with 5 glucose 6-phosphate molecules because of the decarboxylation involved. right? Because in the oxidative phase, when you are converting glucose 6-phosphate to a pentose, you remove a carbon dioxide, right? So if you start with 6 glucose 6-phosphate molecules, such that 6 rounds of HMP are taking place, you will end up with 5 glucose 6-phosphate. That's the idea over here, because you're removing 6 carbon dioxide, so 1 glucose molecule will be reduced in. Is that very clear to all of you? I hope you all are not sleeping and are with me.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So already I've told you the reference for ED pathway, it's Gottschalk. And for HMP, the process, you can see it from Leninger, while the significance of the pathway is from Kohn and Stumpf. So, if I'm not wrong, I should have already uploaded the Kohn and Stumpf part of this, but I would want Nikita, you should confirm this from the drive that I have shared on the Google Classroom, and let me know by the end of the day if the significance of HMP from Kohn and Stumpf is scanned and put up there or not. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so that's all about the HMP pathway, and we are all set to step into the central metabolic pathway's second step, a very, very popular pathway. Very popular, not just in terms of the concept, but even in terms of questions asked in entrances, questions asked in interviews. People love this cycle, which we very popularly refer to as the Krebs cycle, or we call it as TCA, or we also refer to it as the citric acid cycle. So, TCA cycle is a very, very crucial process because a lot of NADH and FADH2 molecules generated from TCA are responsible for getting reoxidized in EPC and generating ATP molecules. And at the same time, TCA cycle is also responsible for producing lot of compounds which act as precursors, which act as raw materials for biosynthetic reactions, for anabolic reactions. Because of which TCA cycle has a lot of significance, and it is also called as an amphibolic pathway. The term amphibolic here basically means that it is involved in both catabolism and anabolism. We very well know that TCA ideally is a catabolic process, but the precursors or the raw materials generated in this reaction are, or rather the compounds generated in this reaction are going to act as precursors for biosynthesis, which makes it uh, a stepping stone for our anabolic processes also. So that's why we end up referring to them as amphibolic pathway. We will be learning how it is amphibolic in more details, because you can see that there's a separate title in your curriculum saying amphibolic role of EMP and TCA. So once you do the TCA and the significance of the cycle, it will be very easy to do incomplete TCA and glyoxylate bypass. So all that will go in one flow. Okay, it will all be a one thing concept that we'll be learning it as. So we will be doing TCA cycle, its significance, the glyoxylate bypass, the incomplete TCA, and the anaploratic reactions together. So by the time we finish this, we will be left only with two small concepts, which is amphibolic role and energetics of glycolysis. So let us see how it takes us this week, and let us see how much we are able to cover it up to, and then we will plan the rest of the part. So TCA was studied and elucidated in details by this particular scientist by the name Sir Hans Krebs. That's the reason why it's referred to as Krebs cycle. There are two other names given to this: tricarboxylic acid cycle and citric acid cycle. The reason for calling it as citric acid cycle is the first stable product that you will see in this process, that is citric acid. That's the first stable compound of the pathway. That's why you call it a citric acid cycle. And this first stable product has 3 carboxyl groups associated to it. That is the COOH groups. There are 3 COOH groups, because of which I also call it as tricarboxylic acid cycle or TCA cycle. Okay, so these are the reasons for the 3 names that you have to this particular process. Now, this process is a complete oxidation process, which means that you're going to form carbon dioxide and water from this particular process. You're not leaving anything behind. It's not an incomplete oxidation like EMP. EMP को हम incomplete oxidation बोलते हैं because a 6 carbon compound is broken down to the level of a 3 carbon compound. So it's not a complete oxidation. I will refer to something as a complete oxidation when it is broken down completely to the level of carbon dioxide and water. Now you have to understand that whatever may be your substrate, whether it's a carbohydrate, whether it's a fatty acid, whether it's an amino acid, all of these ultimately join the TCA. Okay, see, I cannot say that amino acids will come through glycolysis. May or may not. Okay, it depends on which amino acid I am metabolizing. Same goes for fatty acid also. But all of the substrates, all of the respiratory substrates at some or the other point will enter Krebs cycle. The entry points may differ. For most of them, the entry point is acetyl-CoA. That's why acetyl-CoA is called as the active substrate, or it's called as the substrate entrant. Entrant stands for entry because that's the entry point. Acetyl-CoA is the entry point. For most of the respiratory substrates, it's first broken down up to the level of acetyl-CoA. Glycolysis was taking place in the cytoplasm of the cell, but Krebs cycle is taking place in the matrix of the mitochondria. So the locations are quite different. The matrix is going to have all those enzymes which are required for TCA to take place, right? And also we need to understand that the reason for it to be conducted in matrix could be that whatever electron pairs you are removing from the substrates in the form of NADH or FADH2, they can be directly shuttled to the electron transport chain, which is taking place on the mitochondrial inner membrane. Right? So if the process is taking place, maximum NADH and FADH2 is coming from Krebs. So it is better to carry it out in the mitochondrial matrix because then it will be easy to shuttle these two components into electron transport chain. Okay. Now, glycolysis was taking place in the cytoplasm, right? It was taking place in the cytoplasm of the cell. While I'm saying Krebs cycle is taking place in the matrix of the mitochondria, which means that pyruvate which was generated in glycolysis, it will have to travel. It will have to travel up to the matrix of the mitochondria. Are you understanding my point? Because glycolysis is taking place in the cytoplasm, because pyruvate is generated in the cytoplasm, I want these pyruvates to now enter Krebs cycle. But for that, they need to travel. They need to cross 2 hurdles. Can you tell me what those 2 hurdles are? For pyruvate to reach the matrix, what are the 2 hurdles? Anyone?
The mitochondrial membrane.
Very good. Mitochondria is a double membraned organelle. It has an outer membrane, it has an inner membrane. So these 2 hurdles, my pyruvate will have to cross, right? Now, when this process is taking place, when pyruvate is crossing these 2 membranes, let me tell you that the outer membrane of mitochondria is, completely permeable. It allows anything and everything to cross it. But that's not the case with the inner membrane of mitochondria. Inner membrane of mitochondria is too selective. So, for pyruvate to be able to cross the inner membrane, it is subjected to some chemical reactions, wherein pyruvate is now exposed to a enzyme complex, which we call as multi-enzyme complex, called as pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, very popularly abbreviated by the scientific community as PDH complex, pyruvate dehydrogenase, or PDH complex. We call it as multi-enzyme complex because you will see that there are multiple enzyme units associated to it. And we will be naming them separately. So it's not a single enzyme. There are multiple enzymes which are coming together and forming a complex over here, but their aim remains the same. That is to convert pyruvate to the level of a substrate which could be taken into the matrix of mitochondria. That's the ultimate goal. Okay, so there are multiple enzyme subunits. We'll be seeing what those enzymes are, but right now let us understand that it's a complex of different enzyme units. There are multiple coenzymes working over here, out of which, there are total 5, out of which 2 are dissociable coenzymes, which means that they can attach and detach. They don't have to be always a part of the enzyme complex. Okay, so they are called as dissociable coenzymes. Those 2 dissociable coenzymes are coenzyme A and NAD. These are the dissociable coenzymes. And it also makes sense for them to be dissociable because coenzyme A is recycled, and NAD, when converted to NADH, it has to go to ATC. So I can't have it attached at one place, right? So both of them being dissociable makes a lot of sense. Now, 3 of the coenzymes are bound, which means they are attached to the complex. One is FAD, another is lipoic acid, yet another is TPP. FAD, though, is attached in its FAD form. Once it is converted to FADH2, it will be dissociated. And a new FAD has to be attached there for FADH2 to be detached. That's why FAD is called there as bound coenzyme, because one FAD always has to be there to the complex, attached to the complex. Okay, so FAD plus lipoic acid, TPP, these are bound coenzymes. And there is a cofactor which you will see, which is magnesium ions. Okay, so now we will see what happens in the process. For that, we will now first, switch to the whiteboard, and we will come back to this part once we have discussed the reaction. Just give me a minute to cast the whiteboard. Okay, I hope you all are able to see the whiteboard now. So what is this reaction all about? What am I exactly doing to pyruvate in this process? Okay, so let us see that first. So I have pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon compound, which looks something like this. This is pyruvic acid, or pyruvate, as we call it. I have a coenzyme over here, which is coenzyme A. It has a sulfhydryl group. And I have an NAD, which is going to participate. Okay. We have already discussed that there is one cofactor, which is magnesium ions. There is going to be lipoic acid being involved, TPP being involved, FAD being involved. So all my coenzymes I have written over here. OASH, NAD plus, lipoic acid, TPP, FAD. 5 coenzymes, Ng2 plus being my cofactor, right? So what we are going to do is, it's an oxidative decarboxylation. Mind you, it's an oxidative decarboxylation, which means two reactions are going to be carried out at the same time. What is the first reaction? I'm going to get rid of this carbon dioxide and I'm going to get rid of two hydrogens. Okay, so carbon dioxide that's being removed, that is going to come from here, the carboxyl group of pyruvate. Okay, so you will see that this will give me CH3, C double bond O, S co A, because I will attach coenzyme A there instead. Okay, so that will be the difference. And now I have two hydrogens at disposal. One is here, another is with the sulfhydryl group, which will go with NAD to give me NADH and H plus. I'm repeating again. I removed the carboxyl group का COO, released it as carbon dioxide. Instead I attach their coenzyme A. कोएंजाइम ए का जो हाइड्रोजन है और कार्बोक्सिल ग्रुप का जो हाइड्रोजन है वो दोनों हमने NAD को देके NADH और H प्लस बना. The delta G for this reaction is minus 8,000 calories, pH at pH 7. And the enzyme, because you're carrying out oxidation, I've always told you that oxidation के साथ कुछ भी क्यों ना होने दो, एंजाइम हमेशा ऑक्सीडेशन का होगा. ऑक्सीडेशन का एंजाइम इज डिहाइड्रोजनेस, एंड यू नो दैट जिसमें से तुम हाइड्रोजन निकाल रहे हो वो तुम्हारा प्रीफिक्स बनेगा. सो पाइरुवेट डिहाइड्रोजनेज इज योर एंजाइम, एंड एज हियर it's not a single enzyme but it's a complex. I will write it as pyruvate dehydrogenase complex or PDH complex. Now ये जितना सिंपल दिखता है उतना सिंपल है नहीं. It's not a one step reaction. There are multiple steps catalyzed by multiple enzymes over here, because of which we have this complex associated. Okay, so before we go there, I would want you to switch to the PPT. Okay, and what you can do is note the reaction down. Is the PPT visible to all of you? I think so, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So note this reaction down and then we will go ahead. Okay, so as you are done with it, let's move ahead. So as said that this pyruvate dehydrogenase complex is multiple enzyme subunits associated to it. So to be specific, there are three enzyme subunits. Molecular weight is around 50,000 to 2 lakh, and 60 units of one protein or one enzyme is going to be present in the enzyme complex, which means that it may not be one copy of the enzyme. There could be multiple copies of the enzyme, so that faster conversion of pyruvate to acetyl CoA could be brought about. Okay, so there could be multiple units of one enzyme in the complex. It's a very large molecular weight complex, because the entire complex is going to have a molecular weight of around 7.2 into 10 raised to 6. Uh, that's the molecular weight of the entire complex. That obviously depends on how many copies of each enzyme unit is present. Every enzyme unit there is around 50,000 to 2 lakh Daltons, and you can see that if you have 3 subunits, each का भी अगर one copy तुम्हारे पास है, तो it's going to go to a huge molecular weight as a whole complex, right? And moreover, if you have multiple copies of the enzyme in the complex, then the weight is going to go on increasing. So this is just a general figure that has been notified over here. So we name them as E1, E2, E3. Each of these subunits have names associated to them. So we will be seeing that as we discuss the reactions. Again, I will, share my whiteboard so that we can start with the reactions over here. Okay, so I hope you all are able to see the whiteboard. Let's start. So the very first reaction is catalyzed by E1. E1 is nothing but pyruvic decarboxylase enzyme. So as the name suggests, we are going to remove carbon dioxide from pyruvate. So the reaction is between PPP, thymine pyrophosphate, in its carb anion form. So PPP is going to look something like this. So here is the carb anion form, and you have pyruvate associated to it. We have to join pyruvate to it at the point where you see the negative charge. Obviously, for this kind of an attachment to take place, we will add a hydrogen over here to convert this to hydroxyl group, very similar to what you saw in HMP, right? When you do this attachment, and if there is C double bond O, we normally convert that to hydroxyl group. So one hydrogen is going to be taken up. Okay, so you get a complex of PPP and pyruvate, which looks like this. Now what we are going to do is we are going to get rid of this part. We are going to remove it as carboxyl, the carboxyl group as carbon dioxide. So you are going to carry out decarboxylation over here, okay? And the product that you get is going to look like this. We should have, I better draw it below. So what's going to happen is, as I remove the carbon dioxide from this point, okay, and release it, what will happen is that here the double bond which was there between nitrogen and the carbon atom will now be shifted here because of removal of the carboxyl group, and the structure will appear something like this. So this structure is what we call as alpha hydroxy ethyl TPP, because you have TPP group and you have hydroxy ethyl group. That's why you call it as alpha hydroxy ethyl TPP. Okay, the enzyme which is doing this is pyruvate decarboxylase. Okay, you will write the full form. I'm just writing the short form over here because you are removing the carboxyl group as carbon dioxide in this process, and you are forming hydroxyethyl TPP. Is that very clear to all of you till this point? Any questions?
Yes, I understood.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay. What is the time? I to keep a check. Okay, we have some time. Uh, so the next reaction, which is catalyzed by E2, is a very important set of reaction. The enzyme involved over here is a transferase enzyme called as dihydrolipoyl acetyl transferase. So you are going to start with alpha hydroxyethyl TPP. So alpha hydroxyethyl TPP looks something like this. This was what we saw at the end of the first reaction. Now this is going to be rearranged such that the double bond is shifted and you form a carbanion, just like you have seen in the earlier processes also, that we shift the double bond to its original conformation. Same thing we are going to do here. So here I will have a carbanion formed. Okay, so this is the carbanion form of hydroxyethyl TPP. Now this is because I want to attach this to something. We form a carbanion when we want to do a condensation process. Okay, so what I want to attach over here is a coenzyme, a very dangerous looking structure, but unfortunately a very important compound called as the lipoic acid. So this is oxidized form of lipoic acid, which is always attached to a protein. It's a proteinaceous compound. So when these two attach, जब ये दोनों का attachment होगा, it looks something like this. So I have my PPP group intact, PPP hydroxyethyl group intact, and this is where the structure is going to attach itself. So जो सल्फर के बीच का बॉन्ड है वो तोड़कर हम उसको यहाँ पर अटैच करने वाले हैं. Okay. So this is how it is going to look like. Now, why have we formed this complex of hydroxyethyl TPP and lipoic acid? Because now I want to set TPP free. To set TPP free, I have to break it at this point. Okay, मुझे इस point पे उसको break करना है. Okay, तो ये point पर break करते वक्त जो हाइड्रोजन हमने अटैच किया था एट द बिगिनिंग ऑफ फॉर्मेशन ऑफ हाइड्रोक्सीइथाइल टीपीपी, उसको हमको रिलीज करना पड़ेगा. Okay, such that what is going to happen is that the compound that's going to be released will look like this: CH3C double bond O attached to the lipoic acid group, which looks like this. Okay, and that hydrogen which was removed from the hydroxyl group will be transferred to this sulfur. Okay, such that it forms a sulfhydryl group, and the rest of the lipoic acid group will remain as it is. Okay, and TPP is going to be set free. So my TPP is now set free to interact with another molecule of pyruvate. Okay. So what we first did was hydroxyethyl TPP was converted to a carbanionic form so that oxidized lipoic acid can be attached there. So this bond was broken. Okay. And then we wanted to cleave the entire compound such that TPP is set free. So the hydrogen was removed from the hydroxyl group and it was given to the sulfur such that it forms a sulfide. Okay, so this complex that you are now left with is acetyl lipoic acid complex, because what you are left with there is an acetyl group. So acetyl lipoic acid protein complex is what now you are left with. Okay, is this part clear? Have you understood what's happening over here? अगर बहुत घिचमिड़ हो रहा है तो just shift to the presentation. Presentation में तुमको वो reaction clearly दिखाई देगा. Just shift to the PPT. So as you shift to the PPT, you will be able to see what is happening there. I will use a pointer for you to understand. So we have hydroxyethyl TPP. We first shifted this double bond back to nitrogen and carbon. So we formed a carbanion. This was the site where we attached the oxidized lipoic acid group, right? And we formed this particular complex of lipoic acid and hydroxyethyl TPP. Post which we wanted to break this bond and release TPP free. The hydrogen from hydroxyl group of this carbon was shifted to the sulfur, so it formed the sulfidyl group. TPP was set free, and you have acetyl lipoic acid complex which is formed. What happens to this complex? We will see that later. What I would want you to do right now is write down the first two reactions. First, give the heading as E1 pyruvic decarboxylase and write this reaction. Maybe we will not be able to write E2. We'll do that tomorrow, but at least E1 लिख कर ले लो.
And sir, no one is absent. Nirmiti joined in. I
Yes.
think she was having some network issues, so she joined
Okay.
in. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you all done? Okay,